No one has a monopoly on the truth. Our version of our own truths are based on our own lived experiences. In this space, we welcome different perspectives to learn, unlearn, and enlighten. Welcome to The Lantern.
To go or not to go. The start of this year presented me with the new challenge of whether I should set goals. This is the first time in a really long time I started the year outside of an established structure, be that academic or workplace. Prior to this, most of my goals were aligned with the natural progression of what one can expect from such established structures. For example, in school, if you are in year 7, you can expect to graduate and move on over to year 8. A closer example would be in the legal industry. You can naturally expect to elevate your PQE level. For example, if you were a 5-year qualified lawyer, you'd then be a 6-year qualified lawyer the next year. So there I was when the clock struck 12. And I had to ask myself what exactly I wanted to accomplish this year. I found that I couldn't answer this question. Crisis for my overachieving self, until I was like, okay, hang on. Let me take a step back and evaluate, why do we value the goal process setting so much, right? Why have I placed so much emphasis on placing goals in the past? So I began to unpack that, previously I had either time or circumstance dependent goals. I had to ask myself the question of, am I setting these goals to distract myself from the present moment? Do these goals just keep me living in hope? Maybe this is just something that I have decided, this is how I want to take control of my time. And this is how I've decided that I want to spend my time here. Is this something that I've put in place to give myself a false sense of comfort, even possibly a false sense of importance? An example would be if you try sharing your goals with somebody in a different industry to the one that you are in, you quickly realize that your goals only really matter to you and your circumstance, and somebody else might not really resonate to understand why exactly you would set those goals. You're kind of met with an underwhelming response, not really what you would be anticipating. But I think that sort of already highlights that this goal setting is quite a personal experience, and maybe something that we've been socialized and conditioned to do. I do think that goals in themselves can be self-limiting, because what if what you're capable of achieving is so much more than you can actually have imagined for yourself at a particular point in time? If we just reflect upon the glass ceiling, could it be that we sometimes make the glass ceiling akin to our own, personal ozone layer? Do we become so fixated on that particular goal that we kind of exist, that there's so much more that exists beyond that goal? We go and we create our own glass houses for that moment in time. That is the glass house which we will decide to sit in ultimately, and that is the vantage point which we are living our lives from, and we need to take responsibility for that. It is a glass house for a reason, transparent, so that you can still, see what's on the outside of that glass house, and realizing that the glass ceiling in that glass house exists only in that particular glass house. So in life, you'll be faced with two glass ceilings. There'll be the one glass ceiling that you place on yourself, and then there'll be the other glass ceiling that society will place on you. But again, ultimately, we need to realize that these glass ceilings that exist within those glass houses and exist within the parameters of what we've set as our goals, or our measures of success as we decide how we want to spend our time here. So this is what I mean when I say that goals in themselves can actually be self-limiting. If you think about it for a moment, think about a time where you did not achieve something that you thought that you would, right? Although that moment seems to be the longest of your life, and trust me, I've been there, still currently there, working through that. But it passes, right? Your life carries on. You wake up, you see another day, you still hear the birds sing, your heart still beats, you're still breathing. So you kind of realize that, okay, time is really still passing, whether I've set a goal or whether I haven't set a goal, right? And in contrast, if you think about a time where you actually achieved something that you wanted to, been there as well, still there as well. Let's say that goal was time dependent. The time that you spend pursuing that goal just becomes submerged into one long moment, all leading up to an unexplainable adrenaline rush, right? And you reach the peak of that, the summit of your glass ceiling, which we will call at this point now the glass cliff. And you're just met with a huge sigh of relief. At least it's over. I've achieved it. This is great. But again, you still wake up to see another day. You hear the birds singing. Your heart is still beating. You're still breathing. You're still here. And then you realize, okay, what now? Right? And what happens most of the time is usually bigger than us. Destiny and fate are always at play. Whether we decide to set goals or whether we don't set goals, the time usually really is always just passing, right? So we must also understand that we set these goals to measure how we've spent our time here, but that is within our control. So now I want to crystallize my case against goal setting, and excuse me for the lawyery talk of saying my case, but this is how I just want to cement these 5 points that you can keep in mind the next time you go through the goal setting process. And the first point is that with goal setting, there is an emphasis on the present moment. And this is based on a mindfulness approach to things that emphasizes the importance of being fully present in the moment, and in the current circumstance, rather than fixating on some future outcome. This perspective encourages us to embrace and appreciate experiences as they actually unfold, without the pressure of striving towards some predefined or predetermined goal, right? So that's the first one. And then the second one is flexibility and adaptability. Rigid goal setting may feel constraining and actually limit your ability to pivot or adapt to evolving circumstances. Instead of being flexible and being open to things not going the way that they're supposed to, and rather maybe getting into a mindset of prioritizing and maintaining flexibility, because that's ultimately how you will be able to seize any unexpected opportunity and then course correct if needed, without being bound to these predetermined targets. The third one is a reduction of performance anxiety. So it's no secret that when you are focused or determined, set, whatever you call it, on a particular goal, this can sometimes lead to a heightened performance anxiety and self-imposed pressure, right? You put all of this pressure on yourself. You're like, I have to achieve this goal. But inadvertently, you end up being quite nervous, quite anxious. And I think that by refraining from setting concrete performance-based goals, you may experience a greater sense of freedom and a reduced psychological burden. The fourth aspect that I want to share with you guys is the exploration and discovery element. So with a goal-free approach, you can sort of open space for exploration and curiosity and organic growth without predefined endpoints. And this can sort of also, again, foster a sense of freedom to experiment, to learn, to discover new paths that you may not have necessarily thought of. Because again, you make those goals when you're in certain glass houses, right? As soon as you change your vantage point, your goals will change, and your goal setting process and mechanisms will also change. Last but not least, there's focusing on intrinsic motivation. So some individuals prioritize intrinsic motivation, finding fulfillment in the process rather than external markers of success. Now, that I will unpack in another podcast, because these external markers of success, again, I think do sort of guide what our goals will be. They're not necessarily goals that will make us feel good, but goals that look good on the outside to other people. So this is my case against the traditional goal setting process. The decision whether you want to set goals or not is obviously deeply personal, and it does obviously depend on the context. I'm not suggesting that you should never set goals. All I'm suggesting is that you should be open and maybe be a little bit more fluid if you've been a bit too rigid like myself. But again, realizing where that rigidity rigidity comes from. Again, goals and driving towards certain achievements, that may not resonate for everybody. As I say, these processes can come with a lot of anxiety, whereas I think if you are in a more relaxed and flexible mindset, you're probably going to be able to achieve, again, I will do this because it's external, a lot more of actually what you want to than if you have predetermined and preset goals. So to goal or not to goal, that is the question. I am interested to know whether you will be setting goals this year or not. But either way, I hope that this has given you something to think about the next time you sit down and make goals. As usual, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys on the next podcast. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Seize the light within yourself. With love, the lantern.